Uganda to manage syndicated corruption. So we all have space where this can be dealt with. But I think, in my view, actually the problem is not corruption. Corruption just emerged as an opportunity for the youth to express their disgruntlement and dissatisfaction with service delivery. So if I were in the government, I would see how best to fast track where we have service delivery deficits, because people are looking for increased opportunities and better services. But I do not think that an escalation of protests and an increase in state brutality and force will create an equilibrium, or one will be vanquished and another will win. The challenge with political violence, wherever it has happened, it consumes most the key actors in the game.
Hold on to your points, Professor Gerald Kareja and Mr. Moses Yarhanga. Gentlemen, we're going to take a mega milk break and we'll be right back. Welcome back to 933 KFM, and this is the Hot Seat. My name is Patrick Kamara. My guest this evening are Professor Gerald Kareja from Uganda Management Institute and Mr. Moses Yarhanga, Senior Presidential Advisor. Moses, when young people express themselves, they have not been given an opportunity to vent their anger and all that. Eventually, you may have to deal with another type of youth who perhaps are going to be very different. I mean, they could get radicalized. You, you're part of the group that is managing the affairs of the country. Do you appreciate that? That they could actually get radicalized, and then we'll have a very different problem before us. Well, you need to talk to them.
No, talking to them won't be a problem. Even tomorrow, I would need to talk to their leaders if they're there, and even guide them on how to handle those such matters. As we were talking during the break, the youth are represented in Parliament. They have 5 members of Parliament at regional level. Many of the MPs in Parliament also, many of them are youthful, are youth, other than those who represent the youth directly. They have the National Youth Council. The bodies through which they can express themselves are there. There's even a youth minister for youth affairs within the Ministry of Gender. Now, if it's a question of listening to them, nobody has denied them an ear. And the president is always open to discussions, to talk. You have heard him, how many meetings has he had with traders when they have grievances. Even yesterday I was meeting a team of traders trying to find solutions to the issues they have been raising. And the president even met them first of all, he met the traders at State House in Entebbe. After listening to them, he said, okay, let me meet my technical team. Had a meeting with the technical team, came back and had a meeting with them at Kololo. They said we shall have another meeting, so we're having a series of meetings with them. Now, if the youth are not organized and their issues are known, written down on paper, the government will be more than willing to listen to them. And in any case, even though you went to Parliament, you still need the government. So the government is open. If the leadership is there, the issues they want to raise, the government system, including the president, will be open to listen to them and handle their grievances.
Professor, well, the security was able to more or less nip this in the bud, to block them to express themselves. Can they say, the guys in the security, that we have done it? Because at the end of the day, you can only postpone the problem, but the problem can actually even grow bigger and more dangerous to Uganda.
Depending on the intention and motive of the protesters, one of the major achievements of a protest is agenda setting, or having the issue that you're disgruntled with, dissatisfied with, have more attention at the national level. So, in terms of amplifying the cause against corruption, I think the protesters achieved, because the discussion on corruption has increased in the media and in other spaces. Actions are being expressed by different government agencies to demonstrate that they are responding to the need. So in terms of visibility, in terms of having the issue on the table, that was achieved. But studies have also shown that one of the parameters of effective non-violent protests is numbers. Actually, some studies have even indicated that they are as successful as military takeovers or
the numerical strength
or armed struggles.
If they come in big numbers.
If they come in big numbers, they can even cause a regime change. So in terms of mobilization, if one is to assess the protesters on the parameter of mobilization, I think they didn't score. But in terms of getting attention, they did. But now the question is, what was the intention? If the intention is to fight corruption, I think there is still abundant space in this country where those who have pursuits against corruption, people have whistleblown and have provided evidence that has led to prosecution and recovery of money. Private individuals. Maybe you are one of them. Maybe I'm one of them. What I'm trying to do is that there are very many means in which this can be done. And but going back to your central question, did the police or the military service succeed? I think that was. It depends also on their parameters. If it was prevention of violent protest, they did. If it was prevention of the protest at all, they didn't. Because the protest was there. Placards were, publicity was good. Monitor gave about 4 pages, New Vision, and so forth.
The BBC and Al Jazeera.
Al Jazeera was overplaying the president saying, fire, fire, fire. So, yeah, that was the most played on President Yoweri Museveni. I've seen it. So, in terms of attention, yes, but I think in terms of for those who were fearing that the protest would be violent, for those who were fearing that it would be repeated in the subsequent days, for those who had expected that there would be shootings and blood and tear gas flowing all over the city, I think the level of restraint and in terms of using force, the absence of bullets, there was no reported torture, and much as people are questioning the speedy trial, but also that process took place, yes, one can say that in terms of managing protests, we would rather have protests managed and demonstrations managed this way than what we have witnessed before. So in terms of comparison, I would say yes, they did a good job.
Moses, but also this is an indication, Moses, that the young people in this country and maybe other Ugandans have there's that deep-rooted anger amongst themselves. And you who are managing the affairs, how do you get to this anger? How do you, cool them down?
That's not true.
It is. Why do you think they are protesting? Because they're angry.
When you say young people, you're generalizing. And young, what is...
These are generally young, yes.
What is young? What you talk about young is a person of 30 young, the one of 35, they think they are young. The one of 20 think they are young. So who is young? The one of 5 is young. 5 years is young. The one of 10 years is young. So you don't just generalize that young people are different.
Well, the Gen Z now, if you want, and the millennials and Generation X, all of them together.
I don't think that's true. Of course,
but also there's an assumption that we are one of the youngest populations in the world, and the majority of Ugandans are considered to be below 35. So one can assume that in any assembly, younger people
will be the majority.
Yeah, that's true. See, you need to know the structure of Ugandan society. much as the majority of the people are young, but also majority of the people in Uganda are in the villages, are in rural. The rural population is more than the urban population. Now, in the rural population, the majority of them are engaged in farming, either at their own farms or others offering labor to the others. And so what is the government doing for them? Under the PDM model, 30% of the 100 million shillings going to the villages, call it about 33 or so million, is earmarked for the youth, the young people you're talking about. The other 30% is for the women. Then I think the elderly take 10, so the others who are none of these take 20%. So at the end of the day, where the program is being successful, the PDM, it means you're also dealing with the young people you're talking about. And so far, in the last 2 financial years, we are talking of having dealt with at least, if you use that formula, of 60 youth per parish. So it's not so small in a parish. And the people, when they have hope they know they are going to be reached, they will be able to be handled. So while the others in the mostly in the urban areas or in the service sector, so let me give you an example like Kampala. In 2020, government released 16.8 billion and a myoga for Kampala. Recently, and most of these are for youth, the people in the border, in the garages, in the timber dealing, welding, and so on and so forth. Now, recently I called a meeting of Kampala RCCs, the RCC, the deputy and assistants, the Kampala, the division DSOs, and the division NRM chairpersons. And I said, I have here a list from Microfinance Support Center of all the circles in Kampala that received a total of 16.8 billion shillings for youth. To help them in their businesses, saloon operators and so forth. Then I asked the other sister, I said, I want you to use this list, go back to your divisions and parishes and check, are these circles there? Are they, if they are there, 16 billion is not simple money. Small is not small money. Are they operating? If they're not there, how do we sustain these circles? Because in this year's budget, government put in 100 billion for a myoga. So those which are not working, but they are there, we will be able to finance them. And this is going across the board. So, but I'm hearing stories that in some of the cases, you hear there was a circle for ABCD in this division, but the signatories of the circle received the money and the others didn't receive it. So we're going to make some arrests. So if you're talking about fighting corruption, at least there you know, here is the money for the youth scheme and the myoga. Some of their fellow youth misappropriated it, and how are we following them up? Yes, going to making a petition is part of the fight of expression. But here we are being practical. And if you ask me, is the government concerned about these youth? Yes, it is concerned. That's why we have these programs deliberately intended to get the youth out of poverty, create more jobs for them.
Gentlemen, we're going to take a mega milk break and we'll be right back. Welcome back to 933 KFM, and this is the Hot Seat. My name is Patrick Amara. My guests this evening are Mr. Moses Byarhanga, Senior Presidential Advisor, and Professor Jared Kareja from Uganda Management Institute. And if we were to look into what is happening with our neighbors in the East, Kenyan President William Ruto has appointed 4 ministers from the main opposition party in a bid to form a broad-based government that would address governance issues raised in deadly protests. I'm sure governments around East Africa must be wondering why is William doing this? It could end up becoming very contagious. Do you think he's making them uncomfortable with his concessions, Professor Kareja?
No, I think actually he's imitating what has been going on here. The question is why now? Did he not read it earlier? Because he's doing a political experiment using those that your adversaries, bringing them on the table, which is a long-term played game by
President
Yoweri Museveni.
With the Maos and Sebugwaos of type.
And even right from the Semogereres, and it has been his game. I think in his calculation is that even if you are using armed resistance against me, if I can convince you to come in and work together, it is cheaper for me and for the country than for us to be engaged in an armed struggle. And I think he extends it also to the political space. So the question is, was Ruto unprepared? Is this experiment going to work? Does it solve the fundamental problem for which the protesters came? Is he telling the world that it was not about the protests, that
the financial bill and
everything, but it was about the political game, the sharing of the cake? Will this solve the challenges that Kenya is facing, the debt, the corruption, and so forth? So we are yet to see. I think it is too early to judge, but a number of questions come to mind.
But do you think what is happening in Kampala yesterday and the protests are a direct, a copy kind of, they're trying to a copycat of what is happening in Nairobi?
There's what we call political isomorphism. Copying. I mean, people always, when something becomes trendy, others will also try to copy it. But I would say that Uganda has had protests even before Kenya, and protests are everywhere as an it's like democracy provided for protests to have some of the steam off. It's like you are having a kettle on fire and it is totally sealed. It could burst. So democracy provided that event. So one of the events is the protests. So I think that even if Kenya had not experienced protests, maybe we would still have had protests at this point in time. For as long as those who are protesting consider themselves as having not been heard. Because that's the assumption that we use. But also, the motive and the intention of the protesters is seen in the demands that they make. So when we look at the 7 demands that were stated by the protesters, it will give you an idea on what disturbs them. And some of us may be misreading them, that it is unemployment, that it is harsh economic situations. But they're saying the first demand is the speaker's resignation. They are saying the second demand is they want to reduce the number of MPs in the other demands and so on and so forth. So the question is, if you look at those demands, to what extent do they solve the challenges of those protesters? To what extent do they solve the problems that we are facing as a country now? So the best thing is that since they have been put on the national agenda, then the relevant agencies should pick them up, Parliament and so forth. But getting back to you, I think that people will always protest because democracy has provided for it, even if it is not happening in the neighborhood. It's only the consequences of the protests that will always vary.
So Moses, yes, they have been stopped. They have not been able to protest. But really, the real fact is they have just been delayed. So are you reaching out to them, individual, in groups, or whatever it is? Because I think that's what you, as presidential advisors, would be doing.
On political affairs.
On political affairs.
That's a work of intelligence.
You're working on them.
I said that's a work of intelligence. But you see, the most important thing is what are their demands? Are they practicable or not? Those which are practicable, go and work it on. If they're not practicable, For instance, like talking of reducing the size of parliament now, I don't see that being practicable. Basically, it's a constitutional matter which requires at least 2/3 of members of parliament voting
to vote themselves out.
So is that
of income.
Is that practicable? I don't see that being practicable, and that's not the issue in my as far as I'm concerned, because that big parliament or that large parliament has its own advantages in terms of politics. You see, some people look at the size of parliament. Some parliament is big, and other countries are this. But also, if you look at the size of the structure, Uganda, it might be small in geography, but we have a lot of variations. For instance, in Uganda, other than speaking in English, we don't have a common language. If I spoke my Runyoro, you spoke your Rutoro, Kamara, Gujadi spoke his Ruchiga, each one of us, we might pick each other, but because these are Bantu languages. Now, this parliament tends to bring this cultural diversity together. It's different from a country like, you say, Germany, where everybody speaks Germany.
And there's a Germany.
The same culture, same everything. So some of the comparisons then here, for instance, the president will tell you why we created a constituency for the Iki people within Karamoja. There's a small community within, but when they got an MP, they felt we are also there. After all, democracy is about representation. We also represented in the August House. Our views can be heard. You know, when we had I remember the time when Kisoro was part of Kavala district, and the issue was in which language do you teach, like in primary? Do you teach in the Rufumbira or Ruchiga? Very big problem, very big issue. But somebody will tell you, but what is wrong with Kavala being part of Kisoro being part of Kavala? The Rufumbira will say no. So some of these they look, you might say they take a lot of costs, but in terms of money, but they save the political costs you do undergo if there was a kind of isolation. And as I said earlier, democracy is about representation. The people in Kisoro want to be represented by Mfumbira in parliament and their own council. So, but as far as the views of the people are concerned, the NRM government welcomes all views. And what they are put across, we shall look at it, listen to them. We are more than willing to listen to them. The president will be more than willing to listen to them and offer solutions to some of the problems which can be worked on.
Okay, Senior Presidential Advisor Mr. Moses Nyarhanga and Professor Jared Karija. Gentlemen, we're going to take another mega milk break and we'll be right back. Welcome back to 933 KFM, and this is the Hot Seat. My name is Patrick Amara. My guests this evening, Professor Jared Karija and Mr. Moses Nyarhanga. Gentlemen, if you allow, there's a way how the American politics also impact on the world. We have seen the incumbent, jumping out from the race that is not going to seek re-election. Though members of his party, the Democratic Party, were telling him to just not to get on. And the last hour, he's endorsing his Vice President Kamala Harris to run against Donald Trump. How do you read these things, Professor Karija, in the United States? And it looks like Kamala Harris has had, people are saying, the best 24 hours ever, with money flowing into the campaign more than ever, for a presidential candidate at that rate.
Yeah, to begin with, I think that Biden took the right decision not to pursue the nomination, to pursue the presidential candidacy, because I believe that he demonstrated that he cannot cope with the pressure of an election which is coming on account of both cognitive and physical considerations. And again, also, I think it was good that he gave a thumbs up for his vice, whom they have been working together for some time, and also who may have some appeal within the Democratic Party domain. Again, also, Kamala Harris, I think, has some advantages over Trump in terms of maybe debates, in terms of she has been a prosecutor and she can easily claim that she understands how Trump is sexual harasser, how Trump is accused of all these other things about impropriety and tax evasions and so forth. But Trump is gaining traction, and I'm yet to appreciate whether there was an impact of that attempted assassination, whether it has had any impact or not. But Kamala Harris has demonstrated that there is a lot of popularity and endorsements within her party. Over $80 million were raised within 24 hours. But America being what it is, I'm not sure it is ready for a female president. It has a very high,
let alone African
hypocritical stance on the gender question. Two, I also think that the reason for Biden winning, then a number of promises have not been met by the population. So we still have a hot contest coming. It's unfortunate that Trump might win.
Why do you call it unfortunate?
Because I don't have strong
I didn't see that coming.
affinity to his candidature, unlike Moses.
Moses, your assessment?
Well, the U.S. election is good. As a student of politics, I'm a political scientist by training. There was a paper, was it called 2.2 at Makerere, classical politics, where there was comparative politics. It was being taught by the late Professor Kiki Mujaju. So there's a lot of ways to compare here and there. How do you improve on yours based on the other? So, well, for me, one thing, for instance, here we talk about rallies. But our rallies tend to be so huge. In America, what they call a rally, some of them are even indoors. Like the other day, President Trump was, where he was, I don't know the state where he was, I don't remember. But he was the first rally after the attempted assassination. It was indoors. Even the one where there was that attempt on his life, it was not a very big huge crowd. The one which was in Pennsylvania was not a very huge crowd. Their crowds are manageable. And now, maybe the issues would be how do you secure? I think last Wednesday I mentioned this matter, that when politicians are campaigning, they become property of the state. Here, the Electoral Commission is supposed to give every political candidate, especially presidential candidates, security. They're supposed to give you security. They give you security. They give you a vehicle for security on the road, security where you're holding a rally. You're supposed to liaise with the police in the area to ensure that you, the candidate, is secure, and the people on that rally are secure. People going through checkpoints and so forth. So there is a lot to learn from what they are going through. How do we improve on our own? Is there anything to learn from them? I think there is. As far as who is popular and who is not popular, that's for the Americans to decide. But there's a lot to learn from the processes. Jadia was talking about the funds raised by Vice President Kamala Harris. Well, in the last 3 weeks or so, since the other debate on 28th of June, I think the funders, the donors, and within the Democratic Party had withheld their money. So when they found a candidate, now they are happy with they are releasing. Because also I remember in the course of this last week, Elon Musk was quoted on international media to have said that he's going to be funding the Republican presidential candidate, $45 million per month. See, up to election time, and it's about 3 or so months up to election time. So they are all raising money. They are all raising money, and not small monies. If one person says, I'm giving you $45 million per month, it's not simple money. Much as even now Kamala Harris is raising money. But now here, last week we were talking about campaign financing. How do you control? The issue is, yes, raising money won't be a challenge, but how do you spend the money? Here, some people use the money to buy votes. So the question we can learn from the Americans, this money, how do you spend and how do you account for it to the public after the elections?
And also, how do you acquire it?
Oh yeah, how you acquiring people? Okay, sometimes even here, like now with mobile money, you can send and put up an account, and people send money to that account. But the question is, you have received it, but how are you spending it?
Okay,
are you spending it to buy posters?
It's about the transparency of the sources.
Professor, Kamala Harris has had very good 24 hours or 30-something hours, but I'm sure the tsunami is coming. They are going to go on the attack like she's never seen it.
Yeah, sure.
It is likely to get ugly.
No, it is. It will. Trust Trump.
So, we have an 81-year-old president.
But the good thing, it doesn't end up into enmity and...
Do you think all the presidents in Africa should be picking a lesson from Joe Biden?
And Trump?
No, of stepping down.
Trump is not young either. Is he?
Well,
that's why I said from both Biden and Trump. For those who can, run. Those who can't, why hang on when you're limping?
Okay, I'm going to give each one of you gentlemen a minute and a half to make your concluding remarks on the show. Let me begin with you, Mr. Moses Biarhanga.
Well, my concluding remark is on the young people you are young people you're talking about earlier.
Yes.
They can present their grievances to government in a cleaner way without saying less much to Parliament. As I said earlier, in some democracies like America, where they allow demonstrations, peaceful, they must be peaceful, and they are not allowed on the road because that road has other road users who want to use it at the time you're using it. So yes, you have issues. Raise them with the government, they will be addressed.
All right. Professor Gerard Kareja.
I think that there is a degradation of civic virtue in this country. We need to upgrade the level of civic virtue, and also
who is degrading it?
The politicians and those who are using that space, and us also the citizens by playing along. But also I think that there are fundamental questions which are being raised by the protesters. I think the question is getting to the bottom of this, and I think there is a certain level of a service delivery deficit that needs to be overcome.
Professor Gerard Kareja from Uganda Management Institute, thank you so much for the time you've given us, for your submission. Mr. Moses Biarhanga, Senior Presidential Advisor, thank you. But most of all, you, the listener, I want to thank you for the privilege of your company. This brings us to the end of tonight's edition of the Hot Seat. Join us again tomorrow, same time, same station. And coming up next is Nel Woga with the news at the top of the hour.